She lived in a simple neighborhood in a small house with a rusty gate that creaked every time it opened. It was a humble place, but steeped in history. The walls, faded by the passing of time, held laughter, tears, and secrets that only those who lived there could understand. Every day, without fail, she followed the same routine. She would wake early, even before sunrise, and, standing before a small, time-stained mirror, carefully arrange her hair. There was no luxury, no expensive makeup or elaborate hairstyles, but there was dignity in every gesture. Her tired eyes, however, reflected a quiet strength, as if they had weathered storms no one else could withstand. Then he walked to the closet. There were only a few items in it. Worn clothes folded carefully, as if they were treasures. And among them, always the same coat. Old, faded. The fabric was dull, with small hand-sewn patches. To anyone else, it looked like just another worn-out garment that time insisted on wearing away. But to her, that coat was much more than a piece of cloth. He draped it over his shoulders with an almost sacred care, like someone putting on armor before facing the world. It didn't matter if it was hot or cold, summer or winter. The coat was always there, present every step of the way. As he walked through the neighborhood's narrow streets, his neighbors watched. Some simply looked on curiously, others with a certain judgment. Doesn't she have any other clothes? That coat must be. Older than she is? Whispers, muffled giggles. Children often pointed and laughed as she passed. In everyone's eyes, that coat was a sign of poverty, carelessness, or even stubbornness. But no one imagined what he really represented. Because while others only saw wear and tear, she felt presence. While others saw old age, she relived memories. While the world judged, she clung to the only thing that still kept her standing. And silently, she continued walking, always with her head held always high, with firm steps. There was something intriguing in her gaze. It wasn't just sadness. It was as if behind such simplicity there was an immense story, kept under lock and key, that no one had ever dared to ask. Until one day the routine was broken. Someone overcome by curiosity, the insistence of the comments, and the desire to find out what no one knew, decided to ask. The question was simple, almost innocent. Why do you always wear that coat? But the answer come immediately. Oh, the answer didn't. First, a silence. Then a tearful, deep look that seemed to cross time. And then silent tears began to fall. In that instant, the coat stopped being just a coat. It became a portal to a story of love, pain, and longing that no one could have ever imagined. A secret kept for years was about to be revealed, and what was once a source of laughter and judgment, in just a few minutes would become one of the most powerful lessons that community had ever witnessed. Behind that worn fabric, there was a living memory, a piece of your soul sewn into every thread, a love that time could not erase. And when the truth came out, everyone who had laughed before, everyone who had judged before, fell silent. Dramatic pause in the narrative. The coat was not a sign of poverty. It was a sign of resistance. It wasn't carelessness. It was memory. It wasn't shame. It was love. But this revelation, this profound truth, was yet to be told. Who listened, and only those would understand why that seemingly insignificant coat carried within it the most painful story, and at the same time the most beautiful of his life. Over time, the judgmental looks began. She walked through the streets, always with firm steps, always wearing the same coat, and the comments echoed, almost like invisible echoes around her. "Doesn't she have another coat? Don't you realize how old you are? Why do you insist on this?" Some spoke softly, in whispers. Others mercilessly spoke loudly, just so she could hear. The children, too innocent to understand, laughed as she passed, pointed, mocked, and yet she continued, silent, almost untouchable. It was as if he carried an invisible burden that no one could understand, as if the coat, worn and marked by time, was at once his greatest weakness and his greatest strength. There were days when the weight of their stares seemed unbearable. She felt the pressure of each judgment, as if the words were hurled at her chest. But even so, she wouldn't give in. He would get dressed, straighten his coat, and leave, head held high. For some it was pride. For others it was stubbornness. But no one suspected that, behind that silence, there was a story that explained everything. And as with every mystery, curiosity grew. At first, the comments were merely mockery. Over time, they turned to speculation. Some said she had no money. Others believed she was stuck in some old habit, considered that the coat might hold something much greater. Until one day, the inevitable happened. Someone, perhaps tired of imagining so much, or perhaps driven by a mixture of curiosity and impatience, decided to ask. The scene was simple, but charged with tension. She was standing in front of a small neighborhood grocery store, choosing some fruit that fit within her budget. Her coat, as always, accompanied her. The store owner, who had been watching her for a long time, took a deep breath, gathered his courage, and asked, "Mrs. Maria, forgive my curiosity, but why do you always wear that coat? Don't you feel hot? Wouldn't you like something new?" Silence took over the place. The people nearby stopped for a moment. Some pretended not to hear, but all attention was focused on her. The question hung in the air, heavy, almost invasive, and she didn't answer right away. First, he lowered his eyes. Then he gently squeezed the fabric of his coat, as if holding the hand of a loved one. A small gesture, but charged with emotion. His lips trembled, but no words came out. The answer did not come with ready-made phrases, nor with quick explanations. She came with tears, silent tears that ran down his face, scarred by time. Tears that revealed deep pain held back for years. And in that instant, everyone understood that there was something there, something no one had ever imagined. That woman who seemed so ordinary hid within herself a story of love, loss, memories that defied time. The coat, which so many considered a symbol of misery, was, in fact, an invisible link between the present and a past she refused to let die. It was more than fabric. It was more than sewing. It was memory. But she didn't say it right away. The weight of her emotions wouldn't allow it. All she could do was stare into space, clutch her coat to her chest, and let her tears do the talking. The people around fell silent. The children who were laughing before became quiet. The neighbors who were murmuring lowered their heads, because at that moment everyone realized that there was no room for judgment. There was pain there. There was love there. There was a story there that no one was prepared to hear. And that was just the beginning. What she held inside, what that coat represented, was yet to be revealed. And when the truth came out, it would not only silence the laughter, but it would transform the way everyone saw that woman, and perhaps the way they saw life. The coat, so old and worn, would be the key to revealing the deepest of secrets, the memory of a love that time could not erase, a love so strong that it survived even after the farewell. But to understand all this, it was necessary to listen to his story until the end, a story that began with judgmental looks, but would end as an unforgettable life lesson. The coat was not just a coat. Behind the worn fabric, the patches, and the marks of time, there was a story that few could understand. It was the last memory of the husband she had lost. He had given it to her on one of the happiest days of their lives. It wasn't a special occasion. There was no party, no celebration. It was a simple gesture, but full of meaning. He entered the house, smiling, holding a makeshift package. When she opened it and found that coat, she couldn't hold back the tears. It wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was his way of saying, "I want you to be warm, always, even when I'm not around." Shortly after, he left. There was no goodbye, no chance to say goodbye. Fate, cruel and relentless, took him without warning, and the coat, which was once just an ordinary gift, became the most precious thing she owned. Each seam held a moment. Each wear carried a memory. The sleeves, already worn, reminded him of the days when he would help her dress, laughing at the awkward way she positioned her arms. The inner pocket, almost torn, still bore the faint scent of the perfume he used to wear. Even the loose threads were like marks of a story that stood the test of time. She didn't use it for lack of options. It wasn't poverty nor stubbornness. It was love. Because when she put it on, it was as if she could still feel his arms wrapping her in an eternal embrace. It was as if for a moment time had gone back, and he was there by her side, protecting her from the cold of life. While others saw only old age and neglect, she felt presence. As the neighbors murmured, she heard his voice, echoing in her memory. As the children laughed, she closed her eyes and remembered his smile, capable of brightening even the most difficult days. The coat was the bridge between yesterday and today. It was what kept her going, what reminded her that even alone, she still carried within her the love she once had. But this truth, so deep and intimate, had not been revealed to anyone. She kept it silent, protecting that secret, like someone protecting a sacred treasure. And when, finally, the question came, when someone dared to break the silence and ask why she always wore the same coat, the emotion overflowed. The tears fell before the words could even be spoken. And it was at that moment that everyone understood. The coat was not a burden. It was his strength. It was not a sign of poverty, but of wealth. A wealth that time does not steal, that death does not take, that the most hasty eyes do not know how to see. The wealth of true love. Little by little, the judgments gave way to silence. The laughter stopped. And where there was once contempt, respect was born. Because everyone understood that that coat was more than fabric and stitching. It was a living history. A silent testimony that love does not die. It remains in unexpected forms, in the simplest objects, in the smallest memories, in the most discreet gestures. And in that instant, the woman who was once a source of ridicule became an inspiration. Without saying much, without raising her voice, everyone taught a powerful lesson. What seems small isn't always insignificant. Sometimes it's precisely what seems fragile that carries the greatest strength. But his story wasn't over yet. The coat was just the gateway to something even deeper. A secret that, when fully revealed, would make it so that no one would ever look at her the same way again. And so it was that, behind an old coat, one of the most moving lessons that community never forgot emerged. After that, no one saw just one coat anymore. The streets, which once echoed with whispers and muffled laughter, now greeted their presence with respectful silence. What was once a subject of judgment became a powerful reminder. Each person carries within them stories unseen by the naked eye. People have learned to see beyond appearances, to respect the pain that each person carries in silence. Every time she passed by, it was no longer the coat that caught the eye, but the strength that emanated from that simple woman who had transformed her pain into a lesson. She, with her simplicity, showed something that many had never stopped to think about, that sometimes, behind what seems small or insignificant, there is a story bigger than life itself, a story made of memories, love, loss, and resistance. And that was how the old coat stopped being a source of laughter and became a symbol of something that never dies, the memory of true love. From that day on, whenever anyone looked at her walking with her coat over her shoulders, they didn't just see a lonely lady. They saw living proof that love can transcend time, survive absence, and remain alive even when all seems lost. And that lesson spread. Some neighbors began looking inside their own homes, realizing they also kept seemingly simple objects that held precious memories and feelings. A ring passed down from generation to generation, a photograph yellowed with age, an old toy that evoked the innocence of childhood. Each person discovered in their own way things isn't in their shine, price, or appearance. It's in what they represent. And so the old coat wasn't just a reminder of true love. It was also the starting point for an entire community to reflect on their own stories, their own memories, and on how each person judges the other without knowing their pain.